It is a pleasure to open this debate, and I am grateful to colleagues who are attending today despite the immense heat. I'd also like to welcome members of the PANS Panda UK Youth Board and other families impacted by the conditions who are here to watch the debate from the gallery, and I'm grateful for the doorkeepers for their accommodation in that regard. I know that the heat has meant many families who were planning to attend, as well as the PANS Panda UK team, haven't been able to travel down, and I know how understandably disappointed they are, but I'm pleased to still have the opportunity to speak about this condition on behalf of the thousands of children, young people and families who want to know that their voices are being heard. Now, PANS, Paediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome, and PANDAS, Paediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder associated with streptococcal infections, you can understand why we say PANS and PANDAS, Madam Deputy Speaker, are post-infectious conditions which affect the brain and are recognised clinical syndromes by NHS England. PANS is a condition in children and young people that can result from an initial mild infection, such as chickenpox or even COVID. PANDAS is a specific sort of PANS that stems from a strep infection. And whilst these initial infections might be mild, in some cases it triggers a misdirected immune response under a brain inflammation that causes the rapid onset of severe symptoms. Children can go from being healthy and thriving to experiencing obsessive compulsive behaviours, tics, extreme anxiety, eating restrictions and profound neurological symptoms almost overnight. PANS Panda UK currently supports around 8,000 families, but we know that this is likely to just be the tip of the iceberg. In reality, there are likely to be children and families affected in every single one of our constituencies. And I know, looking at the members that are here today, it's often because they have been contacted by a constituent who is struggling to get support for their children. That's the reason why they get in touch with their Member of Parliament and why we become engaged. And that's the same for me, Madam Deputy Speaker. I first became aware of PANS and PANDAS when constituents reached out to me for support for their daughter who were struggling to get a diagnosis and the needed medication. And I want to emphasise the key point that early diagnosis and treatment are absolutely crucial. When identified early, outcomes are significantly better, and in some cases a simple course of antibiotics can alleviate these symptoms. However, the experience is very much the opposite. What we see instead is delay, confusion and inconsistency. Research from PANS Panda UK suggests that over 53% of families wait more than a year for diagnosis and 37% wait for more than 2 years. Too many families face rejected referrals, long waits and in some cases misdiagnosis. Only a small proportion are diagnosed within the NHS and many are forced to travel long distances or turn to private care. We know this isn't possible for all families and it can mean that families are brought to their knees to afford the private care needed for their child. I'm aware in one constituency example of mine where within the same GP practice one GP will provide support and the other does not recognise the condition, and that makes things very difficult. And I think I just want to mention something in relation to private support, because I have to say, in terms of the number of families that I've engaged with, it's often that they have to go for private support. And it just makes me think, and I hope the Minister is sympathetic to this, what about those children from those families who are reliant on NHS support and don't get the diagnosis? And what about the fact that they are then absent from school for long periods of time, or indeed written off as potentially problematic families with children with problematic behaviours, when ultimately this condition could be at the root of the problem? And when we're thinking about our ongoing economic well-being, we need to ensure that we support children to be in education as much as we possibly can. And that's why the research, Madam Deputy Speaker, is so important. We need to ensure families can get the support they need, no matter their financial situation. The National Institute for Health and Care Research funded evidence synthesis is currently underway, and that's something that's changed since the last time this topic was debated. And it is already highlighting significant gaps in our understanding, particularly around effective treatments. Now, with other members of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on PANS and PANDA, which I chair, we met with doctors some time ago who are researching how the brain functions. Their work suggests that there may indeed be biomarkers indicating a higher likelihood of developing these conditions, and they produce fascinating research that I would encourage colleagues to read. I really do believe that we need to understand how severe the impact of PANS and PANDAS can be on a child, and it's clear that further research is urgently needed to aid both that diagnosis and treatment, which often needs to be ongoing. Awareness and training are also fundamental. Without it, as we've mentioned, healthcare professionals miss the signs and teachers misinterpret symptoms. Children experiencing sudden neurological decline are too often viewed through the lens of behaviour, anxiety or neurodiversions rather than as a medical emergency. And from the children that I've engaged with through the Youth Board, it is a terrifying experience for a young person to be dealing with those symptoms. But I am pleased to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do think that we are at an important turning point. That UK clinical guidance that the member for Harlow mentioned is expected later this year, and there has been significant work since the last debate, which I held in September 2023, to bring PANS and PANDA further into the policy landscape. And I want to pay tribute to PANS PANDA UK for that, because they have been the key drivers as a charity to making that happen. But guidance alone will not be enough. It must be consistently embedded across the NHS so that we end the postcode lottery in diagnosis and care. And I suspect we will hear about some of that from the other members who are speaking. Because those consequences are profound. That human cost of delay and misdiagnosis is devastating. Children lose the ability to attend school, lose previously secure skills, and experience severe psychiatric and physical symptoms. And just a few months ago, I hosted a round table in Parliament where the PANS PANDA UK Youth Board could speak directly to MPs about their experiences. As an MP, you obviously engage with the parents in the first instance, but it was very, very powerful to hear directly from children themselves who are experiencing this condition. And I know that they might not be here in the gallery, but I know many of them will be voting, because we were informed that they are the voters of the future and they are paying attention to what we do right now. But it was an eye-opening session, particularly for those who had not heard of the condition previously. Those children spoke about wanting to be believed, to be understood and to get help more quickly. Their message was clear: earlier recognition could change everything. They explained how PANS and PANDA have impacted their lives, from watching their peers progress whilst feeling stuck behind, being too unwell to attend school, so having to repeat years, and this just adds to a feeling of isolation. I think we can all remember the times when we were younger, where childhood was quite cruel. Families have described watching their child disappear in front of them. Parents leave work to provide care. 36% report having to stop working entirely, and many families face financial losses as a result of that, but also in providing private care. We've also heard from siblings of children diagnosed with PANS and PANDA at the Youth Board Roundtable. In fact, I believe the Honourable Member for Henley upon Thames has a constituent here just this afternoon who is part of the sibling community, which was a stark reminder of how these conditions impact entire family units, from the financial impact of having to seek that health care or a parent leaving their job, to home becoming an unstable and unpredictable environment. I also do want to touch on education. These conditions have a devastating effect on learning. Nearly half of affected children miss more than 6 months of school, and over a third miss more than a year. And they experience the sudden loss of core learning skills on many occasions. And under the current system, and I'm talking about in England, which is designed to support gradual, stable learning needs rather than acute on-site, and indeed under aspects of the proposed SEND reforms, there's a real risk that these children are misunderstood. Without clear guidance, education professionals currently default to familiar frameworks. Sudden loss of skills can be misinterpreted as behavioural or neurodivergent, leading to inappropriate supports being put in place and a delay in the medical intervention required. And that is why that alignment between health, education and local authorities is so critical. And obviously I'm standing here as a Scottish MP. We must assure that this alignment takes place across the UK to ensure there isn't a postcode lottery determining the level of support available. My Scottish Liberal Democrat colleague Adam Harley, the new MSP for Strathkelvin and Bearsden, recently raised the case of his constituent in the Scottish Parliament, and I was particularly disappointed in the response of the First Minister John Swinney, where he referenced PANS PANDA as a rare disease. It was clear he knew nothing about it, because despite my own correspondence with his government, we have seen limited progress in Scotland. I want to emphasise to colleagues today, it is not potentially a rare disease, it is an undiagnosed one. I genuinely believe there are many, many children who have PANS PANDA who have not been diagnosed and are not therefore getting the support that they need. But this does underline the need for close engagement with devolved governments to ensure a truly joined-up approach to provide improving support. And I would like to highlight that while today's debate will largely focus on children and young people with PANS PANDA, it is equally important to recognise the challenges faced by adults. One adult with PANS PANDAS shared with me that she's experienced mostly psychiatric symptoms rather than physical ones. And research shows that PANS and PANDA can be associated with systemic inflammation and autoimmune responses affecting the whole body, including conditions such as arthritis and other inflammatory diseases. In this person's case, tests revealed ongoing systemic inflammation that has caused damage to tissues and organs over time as the immune system mistakenly attacks healthy cells rather than protecting them. Too often, the type of symptoms that PANS PANDAS can manifest are put in a basket of symptoms that are just too difficult to deal with. And as I conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, these are the practical steps we are asking the Government to consider. First, as the UK clinical guidance is published later this year, there must be a clear commitment that steps will be taken to ensure it's embedded consistently across the NHS, not left to chance, and that appropriate stakeholders are engaged to support its dissemination. Secondly, we need training for healthcare professionals and for those working in education so that symptoms are recognised early and acted upon appropriately. And thirdly, we must see a renewed commitment to research funding, building on the National Institute for Health and Care's research work to address the significant gaps in evidence and improve treatment pathways. I ran the London Marathon, my first ever, at the end of April. Fundraising for one of the charities was PANS PANDA. It shouldn't take fundraising to deliver the funds that are needed to deliver the research that will provide the right support for these children. And finally, there must be clear signposting and alignment with the forthcoming local authority guidance to ensure that schools and services are equipped to make their legal duties. As one clinical psychologist working with a young person with PANS has stated, without training, pupils risk unnecessary and avoidable long-term loss of skills. And I'll be pushing for exactly that in Scotland. This debate is an opportunity to put these issues firmly in the record, to raise awareness across Parliament and to ensure that families living with PANS and PANDAS feel heard. I'm grateful to those colleagues that are here today. I look forward to hearing their contributions and to the Minister's response. Thank you.